All right, hey, it's Tim Reha here at the HPA Tech Retreat. We have David Hoffman with Blackmagic Designs.
Yes.
And it's one of my favorite brands. We got an 810 Mini Pro ISO here. You guys had a new camera, that I think the G2 Broadcast.
That's correct.
That came out, and you're working on a really cool project that I was thinking about traveling through Arizona. And I'm curious what brought you down here today, and then we can go into the project. But first, a little bit about your background.
So I've been with Blackmagic Design as the business development manager for the Americas for about 5.5 years now. I come from a visual effects background, and so it's exciting for me to be able to see, finally, after decades of doing green screen work, we finally realized what it really means to do in-camera compositing with the virtual production. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun.
Very cool, very cool. And so you have a session tomorrow.
I do, yep. So tomorrow, as HPA is kind of the tip of the spear, and as we're going towards and talking about what is the next technology, kind of getting some awareness on it. We've been talking about cloud-based workflows for a couple years now, and we've done a couple productions where we brought people together in first Los Angeles for the Lost Lederhosen project 3 years ago. And then last year, we tried to reach out and do it globally, as HPA kind of reached out and did it globally. I thought it would be interesting if we were to take that same technology and bring it back down to who are the next generation of storytellers and creatives, and that would be our high school students and our college students.
And I think that's where is especially where education's at today is you got to start when you're young. Like my mom hooked me up with an SE30 computer in high school, and it was literally, that's when you etch your brain in these. I always say, instead of playing video games, play video games, but learn how to make them and learn how to make films, and it is fun.
Right. Well, we partnered up with an amazing school out of Flagstaff, Arizona, called the Kalani Border Town Dormitory, and they have an after-school program called the Kalani Film Project. And this dormitory is a housing environment for students that come from either the Navajo Nation or Hopi Nation, which is a very expansive space, and so they may travel hundreds of miles to go to school at Flagstaff High School. So they live in residence at the dormitory, and then they are also taking this after-school program and learning the art of filmmaking. So we thought, well, we'll work with them, and we paired them with the University of Arizona, which has an exceptional film theater program.
They're opening up a digital volume in LA, right?
Center of Excellence here in LA. Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. And so we thought it would be a great opportunity for us to put the two schools together. University of Arizona has a storyteller program where they're out there looking to get the voices of the BIOC community, right? So we're looking at people of color, indigenous communities, and things like that are somewhat underserved in terms of getting access to the tech. There's a huge tech in equity there. And so we said, hey, we'll go ahead and do this. And when we give them, hey, make a 3 to 5 minute movie. We weren't going to get into the context of the movie. That was for them creatively to come up with on their own.
A lot of things are just taken for granted. Like you get blasted with 5G and all this bandwidth everywhere. In a lot of these areas, they need to get fiber, and they're not just wired up, and they're left behind.
That's correct, and especially when we talk about the Navajo Nation. So it's a very dispersed community, and after our first interactions and planning sessions, we thought, well, we'll just go ahead and give you access to AWS, and you're going to have virtual machines, and you'll be able to work from home over the Christmas holiday. Didn't really turn out that way because a lot of the homes don't actually have high bandwidth connections, if internet at all. Some of them don't even have running water, mostly well water, and they're driven by community access to things like healthcare and things like that. They don't have the infrastructure, and so immediately we realized that we'd overshot a little bit on our expectations of what we were going to do. What we did not overshoot was the creativity of the storytellers themselves. The students who were 14, 15, 16 had generated their own story that they wanted to tell, that they had gotten a derivative idea from looking at anime in Japan. So when they're in the dormitory, they all have access to the technology, they have iPhones and their iPads, and they were able to do the research. And they said, hey, we're gonna take this source material, and they translated it into a cultural expression that was relevant to themselves as a horror movie called Talith, which is a hair bun that they wear. It's a traditional hair bun.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so we were able to go, wow, we are learning a ton from these young storytellers and the richness of their culture.
And we've been using devices like pens, and now we have digital pens to etch stories
That's right.
on rocks. And I was just out in Gateway and out in south western Colorado, and the amount of history that's there that's still uncovered is amazing.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the Navajo culture is that they don't have a written language necessarily that they transfer on. So it's important for them over the thousands of years. This is a thousands of year old culture. It is important for each generation to learn the history and tell it, and they do it through storytelling. It's either dance or art, and now we're giving them filmmaking capability, and they're continuing that art. If it don't do it right, their culture disappears. In fact, some of the students at the Bordertown dormitory don't speak the native language now. They have lost contact with their culture, and they're coming there to learn and be a part of that. Again, some do speak the language, and there are many different clans within the Navajo Nation, and they're all learning how to share that information again that they've been losing over time. And it's through storytelling. And now they're a visual storytelling with filmmaking.
Cool. So what gear did they get use from Blackmagic?
So from Blackmagic, they had already had access to one of our Pocket Cinema 6K cameras. We gave them the Pro model, which allowed for them to do outside shooting by having a neutral density filter on it.
Yeah.
And then we came up with a video assist, which this was a really interesting point. Actually, we have a monitoring device called a video assist that allows you to record onto the device itself and play back. It has HDMI and SDI inputs and things like that. On the first day of the shoot, I come out and I see that they've tethered this thing to a 12-foot HDMI, and they're using it as a validity check. So they're passing it around themselves. Hey, does this look good? So they're taking a tap off the camera, and they're passing this around on the tether and showing it to the actors. And I'm like, I went to the woman.
Love that.
And I go, who taught them how to do that? She's like, it just made sense to them. They just did it on their own. I'm like,
yeah,
brilliant. Love it. Love
cool.
it. So we brought up an Ursa G2 as well, an Ursa Mini Pro G2. They were able to shoot a little bit with that, and then Resolve, and then we had the college student Christian Jackson, who was with the University of Arizona graduate student. We outfitted him with our control panels, and he was doing all the editing, and then we were using AWS virtual machines to do to host the editorial Resolve studio, and then everybody was able to share and do collaborative workflows that way.
Cool. I was playing with Resolve on our little the 16-inch Cintiq, and we need to actually talk to you guys to get the multi-touch SDK built in because it's pretty fun to switch.
Yeah, very cool.
And so, let's. We're kind of running out of time. Dinner's coming up here, so tomorrow you were here Thursday.
I am.
And so, what's the session called?
Session is called the future of storytellers and the tools that they'll be using. So it's going to be at I believe 11:25.
And what's next for you after this?
After this, probably go home and chill a little bit after being away a couple days. But we are continuing our efforts with the Fathead project. We're on that as well.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Everybody is, but yeah.
What was your role on Fathead?
So we're doing the on-set editorial. So as the shooting's coming off the camera, it's being fed up into S3. And then we have an editor who's working remotely, accessing that and threading all the dailies together and feeding that out to the production team for review.
Awesome.
So
all right, cool.
Whole nother again, cutting edge of it all. So
yeah, what's great about this event is we have a lot of internet friends that you've never met, and so David and I have been like, I always follow him on LinkedIn, give him a follow on LinkedIn, but it's nice to see you in person. Absolutely.
It is great to actually be back in person and be doing these things. It just can't be replicated on a virtual environment. So.